एंड
सॉरी।
वी विल इन्फॉर्म। आपको आवाज आ रही है मेरी?
अब आ रही है? जी
जी
बताएं।
जी, आपकी हम आपको सुन सकते हैं। हम थोड़ी देर में अपना सेशन स्टार्ट करें तो वी विल इन्फॉर्म यू।
यू मीन देयर स्टिल अ डिले?
हाँ जी, हम लोग 5 मिनट में, लेस देन 5 मिनट, वी आर गोना स्टार्ट इन लेस देन 5 मिनट्स।
ओके राइट, लेट मी नो।
Welcome back, everyone. So we have our chief guest, Senator Sherry Rahman, waiting to give us her address. So I would like to welcome her now. Senator Sherry Rahman is the chair of the Standing Committee on Climate Change and Environment and a former federal minister for climate change. Senator Rahman, a four-term parliamentarian, diplomat, journalist, and civil society activist, has received numerous accolades, including Pakistan's Nishan-e-Imtiaz and recognition in Time's 100 Most Influential People of 2023. Her extensive career includes roles as Pakistan's ambassador to the US and federal minister for information and broadcasting. Senator Rahman, we're eager to hear from you.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
All good? All right. Thank you very much, all of you at the LUMS Organizing Committee for the Asia Energy Transition Summit. I understand it's a Sunday and I'm quite downstream in all the speakers, and we are in closing end session. So I'm going to be as brief as possible, but do bear with me while I speak about some of the most important things in my view for not just Pakistan, but the entire region. I appreciate that all of you have positioned this in the context of Asia. Now, this is because obviously, Asia is leading the renewable energy transition, and we all know about the context in which such transitions are driven. They are always more effective when they're connected across borders, like carbon emissions. They're as lethal whether they know whether there's a border or not. So if you have problems without passports, like cybercrime, like climate change, which is, in my view, the most existential crisis, not just a mega trend, but a meta trend, that impacts everything. So I'll speak of 3 things. One is that really energy transition is not discussed enough in Pakistan, particularly anywhere there is a conversation about energy. We become locked in serious grid modernization and the problems we have in our own very old, unwieldy, and inefficient power sector. So I think any transition to renewables, to cleaner energy is welcome for 2 reasons. One is that Pakistan's had a very difficult experience with and challenging experience in the recent years with importing energy. And you've seen that the energy bill, imported energy bill, furnace oil, and now our LNG has gone up exponentially within and to be one of our largest expenditures in dollars. And then of course, I don't know if you all remember, but there was an energy crisis when one of the terminals terminated their contract, the RLNG terminals terminated their contract because they were bid away by a more expensive, by someone paying a higher price. So these, as you can see, energy markets on even LNG and other fossil fuels are fairly predatory, and they don't really look for justice or any kind of bottom line other than immediate profits. So I think it makes good housekeeping sense as well as anything else for Pakistan to be very serious about not just modernizing its grid, but moving into another area, which is another era of energy transition, which, as you know, is, of course, very much part of our transition to net zero, the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions. But let me just set, before I delve into Pakistan, let me just set a little bit of a global context to this. I know you're thinking about Asia because Asia is leading the charge in renewable energy. But let me just remind you how this all began. This began really in 1979 when a United States president, with a little bit of foresight, installed the first 32 solar panels on the rooftop of the White House to power up their heating system. And at that time, it was chunky, it was inefficient, it was quite expensive. In fact, it took $28,000 at that time, 1979, to, if you peg that to today's prices, to initially just install that. And each solar panel weighed 45 kilos. Each solar panel weighed 45 kilos. So much so that they were considered an eyesore and an overinvestment in the White House heating system, and the Reagan administration then went ahead and removed it. From that day to today, how the world comes round is demonstrated by this one metaphor. One of those solar panels now, those huge, unwieldy, almost like a spacecraft panel, is found in a museum in China, which, as you now know, is leading that charge in renewable energy, because their energy mix now is heading very aggressively towards the transition to clean energy. They have been one of the biggest polluters in terms of emissions, but most of their cities, I've just returned from China on one of these conversations, are peaking early, which means that they're ahead of their targets, particularly cities like Shanghai, which is the largest port in the world now. So these cities, they are now seeing energy as part of a larger, interdependent, interconnected system, which means that the shipping too will be green, which means the sulfur release will also be changed. The systems encompassing it will be changed. So nothing is in silos or should be in silos. And in doing so, what they've done is that they are changing the entire story and the journey of energy transition. As we look at how this goes forward for the rest of Asia, because this is an Asian conference, I just want to quickly touch on, say, Bangladesh, which has been close to Pakistan. We worry Pakistan is now ahead of us in terms of obtaining climate finance for energy, as well as setting up more, but certainly household units, and which now cover 12% of their population, almost 20 million people. And that's just household units. And they've been quite revolutionary in their home solar units. And these are important lessons to learn. Their entire adaptation plan is also quite locally generated and adapted. So is ours, by the way. That's the last thing I did as minister before leaving, because we really should be, I urge you, next time be talking about adaptation. And we can talk about why, because energy transitions are what is a conversation that's crucial. But for countries like Pakistan, where frankly emissions are not the problem. The problem is efficiency, not emissions. In our energy sector, we are a very low emitter. We are less than 1% of global emissions, something like 0.81, and that is a very low threshold for emissions. That which should bring us to worrying about why we should move with this energy transition, and what progress we're making, what steps we need to be taking, and where we go with that. And we can just talk about that in a minute. But let me be very clear. Energy transition summits are very glamorous. They hold the center of all climate conference conversations because they do. No country can have any wealth, can accumulate wealth in the 20th, 21st, 19th centuries without energy moving those wheels. So yes, wealth has still not been decoupled with energy. And so far in the world, let me report that wealth has, or economic growth as we like to call it, has still not been decoupled from fossil fuels, which are the reason we are having this renewable energy conversation. And again, we can go right back to that in the end when we talk about the build up to COP29, which is taking place in Baku in November. Now, where is Pakistan in this context? And before I go further, my one exhortation would be to the government today is to consider energy transition financing as a key movable consortia package to work on, because that is the future. Why I say, because as you've acknowledged in your own findings, the countries most impacted by accelerated climate change impacts are getting the least of the green or climate financing in the world. In fact, very, very small percentage, something like 23 billion, as you know, has been generated and spent. So less than almost 2% of these countries. Now you ask yourself, why is that? In mitigation, even less so in adaptation. I would really like adaptation to be part of your future conversations if you're studying any kind of climate change, because, and it's not a priority of the global north. There's not that kind of money in it. Most of it means really evolving local solutions that may use technology to leapfrog a generation of modernization, but it is where we are going to be on the front lines of fighting for our survival. Now, countries like the small island states, Maldives, etc., in the South Asian region, are fighting for their survival. and they don't have any contribution to emissions. They are, say, the Maldives minister tells me that they're going to be sinking in 8 years. Many countries in the Caribbean, small island states, are already being moved away from their islands. No, we won't turn down the fossil fuel tap, but we will move people from their indigenous locations, habitats, ecosystems, and countries, and the lives they ever knew, to probably migratory camps where they have where they live subsistence and precarious subsistence lives on precarious incomes and precarious migration statuses. So, coming back to Pakistan's issues with energy and the transition, obviously, as you must have all hopefully discussed, the good news is that there is a huge amount of capacity here for renewables, whether it's solar, whether it's wind, or it's hydro. And there's a great investment in hydro already in the country. But as I said, I want to be very, very clear. It's not, the issue in Pakistan is not an emissions problem. It is very clearly an efficiency problem. And that is going back towards why we should go renewable. Well, two reasons. One is that renewable energy is cleaner energy. It will impact your life. It is not local pollution that Lahoris are battling every winter, perhaps more than anything else. That is entirely in your control. That is not controlled by somebody in the North Atlantic Sea emitting fossil fuels that are harming you faster than they're harming somebody, say, in the great island of Britain. That's how climate change works. And you might well ask, what is the Arctic sheet melting? How is that going to impact us? It's impacting us in the here and now. Pakistan has never seen a long cyclone cross the Bay of Bengal from the Indian Ocean into the Arabian Sea, like we saw 2 years ago. It was called Hurricane Cyclone Biparjoy. Funny name, but there you are. That cyclone sat on the Arabian Sea for way longer than we have ever seen. It sat on the Arabian Sea well over 8 days, gathering momentum because the sea was warmer. And the sea was warmer because of fossil fuel emissions. The entire world's energy and global mean temperature crisis is a crisis of the fossil fuel industry, created by, not mitigated enough, and not financed enough for their sins, okay? So let's be very clear. This is not Pakistan's only problem. We are on the receiving end. So really, we should be having a conference on how countries like Pakistan build resilience, which is also another name for your adaptation plans. Far more complex, far more complicated, and given much less attention, because the global warming through energy emissions, rather fossil fuel emissions, will keep going up, as the trajectory will tell you. We are at this point, as we go into the 29th Conference of Parties by 195 countries for the last 30 years, we are in the highest trajectory of global mean temperatures. We are well above the 1.5 that was over pre-industrial limits as proposed by the highest point of all conferences, the Paris Agreement in 2069. We are well above it. So make no mistake, the goal of 1.5 is not alive. It is no longer alive. We are hurtling into a 2 degree to 2.5 degree world by 2050. Secondly, 2050 is the target set for all of these net zeros and NDCs. That is going to be too late for countries like Pakistan. The decisive decade is here and now, and that is where you peg all your internal changes before you combust any further. And believe me, in the south of Pakistan, it is 53 degrees almost every summer. Either it's in Jacobabad or Dadu or Turbat in Balochistan. 4th year running, we have seen temperatures at 53 degrees in the summer. That makes you the hottest place on the planet. You're not making that global heat wave happen. You are on the receiving end of it. which brings you to what can you do about it. Lowering your emissions will help. It will decrease your import bill, which you desperately need to do. Your energy debt burden and cycle circular debt is now going into unsustainable trillions. Your ability to match global agreements. You've made nationally determined contributions. By 2060, by 2030, Pakistan is set to come down 60%, and we can be renewable. We can easily be renewable by 2030, sorry, 60%. We can be renewable to a higher percentage if we integrate our plans and not work in silos. If we provide what I call a reduction in production costs, which is entirely doable. If we attract international investments, which come when you are already showing capacity and project credibility, as well as contractual longevity and stability, which means you don't change the terms of the contract 5 years from now. That's what international investments ask for. And I know that this must have been part of a discussion over the great IPPs debate, that we have capacity and what are we doing about it. So just before I leave you with capacity issues in Pakistan, look at our installed capacity. The issue is not adding more energy to the mix. We are well over our requirements for energy, are well under our installed capacity. So clearly it's efficiency, at least 10,000 megawatts under our installed capacity. At peak summer demand is around 35,000 megawatts. Your installed capacity is 10,000 more than that. Winter demand is much less. So there may be other gas problems in winter, but I'm talking about the entire energy load. So 3-4 things. One is that, first of all, there is absolutely no reason to provide powerful advocacy for Pakistan to make the transition to energy. We have the sun, we have the constant unmitigated sun, except for a few weeks of the, maybe the monsoon months. And we have the, as far as wind energy is concerned, we have what is known as the famous Jhampir corridor, which is already, I think it's producing very small percentage of megawatts within, I think, 50 just now. We have also biomass, which is now one of the ways of producing energy. So you can actually reduce your methane emissions, which are huge. Nobody's talking about them, but they're going to be the next killer. They're much worse than carbon dioxide. And the world is right now too scared to even discuss that beyond a treaty, which has come to very little. So Pakistan's first biomass plant was set up in 2020. And it was launched in Faisalabad. It's only producing 12 megawatts. But I asked the industries minister when we were in power to look at that, and we actually saw it. It's a very exciting plan to use waste to energy. China is doing it exceedingly well. And there is no reason for us, being an agricultural country in many ways, to not be able to do this. So next, obviously, is we've talked, wind is not huge, but the capacity for that is very big. Why is it not taken off? My view is that it hasn't taken off because it hasn't had regulatory stability. Sounds very boring, but if I'm an investor and I'm coming in, and if NEPRA keeps changing the tariffs on me, then I'm not particularly going to be interested in buying that, would I? I mean, you're investing, investment goes towards profits, and they want contractual stability. They want the same contract or the same rates that they were promised while the project was in its gestation. So I think we need some contractual stability and actual, I mean, really, we should be having a roadshow to attract wind energy. The entire coast of Spain is now solared by wind. Many countries are now solar, but are powered by wind. So we do have that capacity. The biggest corridor is in Sindh and Jhampir because of the coastal areas. And now you have, of course, the big one. I'm not going to focus on hydel or nuclear. I believe that hydel power is very already generative, and Pakistan has concentrated its energies on expensive, huge, long gestation power projects, which are not the future at all. It's the smaller ones that are the future. And particularly if you go up north, they are far more important and germane to communities because that's where the water has the power coming down from the height of a mountain to the river basins or to the tributaries to actually generate a great amount of electricity. Where it flattens out in the south, you don't have that kind of power to generate unless you're turbining it. And as I said, that's no longer the future. How many of your big signature Hydel projects have have recently come to fruition? They carry on and on because they require huge amounts of consortium financing and entire consortium villages to put them together. This is not the age of Tarbela or Mangla, let alone be blasphemous of Kalabagh. So that's over. Big dams no longer are the way for the future anywhere in the world. They also silt up in our part of the world. The whole of South Asia knows that. And the amount of money it takes to desilt these dams is now actually quite prohibitive. So nowadays we're taking loans to desilt our big dams, namely Mangla and Tarbela. So, and Tarbela was made at a time when the US was willing to really provide the kind of development finance it used to, and it was their signature project in Pakistan. That is not the case anymore. If you don't have that kind of sustained online funding that's not going to disappear in 3-4 years, then you don't want to even think about long gestation, huge projects. That leaves us with what? It leaves us with solar. And believe it or not, that's the good news story. While we can wring our hands about the failures of our power sector and the money they suck, due to inefficiencies and an aging, unwieldy, unmodernized grid with at least 16% of transmission losses, what are you doing with the one big power you have shining all day long and making us a very hot country? You know, you turn that challenge into an opportunity. And what's good is we don't really follow the news to a point where we're tracking trends independently of what the government is telling us. Well, independently of what the government is telling you, 2 provinces are already on their way to very serious solar revolutions. And one of them I call the rooftop revolution, which is happening, a lot of it is happening in Sindh because there is a great deal of, as like Bangladesh, enabling subsidy for the smallest householder there. And that is going to be, within those that have 200 megawatt capacity, and you are going to have that kind of grid, not grid, but you're going to have off-grid solutions like that. Because as batteries go down, the cost of batteries go down. Remember, from the White House of 1979 to today, the Pakistan's entire parliament building has been green for over a decade. We, in fact, sell energy to the grid. And so has, President House and all the other big buildings in Islamabad are now green. And the net metering policy introduced recently, well, not that recently, but what it does is it incentivizes people to, invest in the capital it needs to lay on the solar panels. And when they have lower bills, they go off grid and they are selling to the actual national grid. And you've had this problem recently where the national grid has turned around and said, hey, we are getting, they haven't said it, but that's something we've seen in Islamabad. Hey, this solar thing has gone too far. All of Pakistan is buying into it on a big and a small scale. So what are we going to do? Who is going to use up this expensive power that we are generating? So you're generating electricity that at some points nobody wants. It's expensive, dirty fuel energy that nobody really wants. Okay? Because people have started investing in their own green, low-cost energy solutions. Now, what this means is that, why am I saying there's a rooftop revolution? I'm saying it because if you look at Asian markets and how they import, their import trends, and just look at the trade figures of China and Pakistan, you see, and China is making the highest number and now cheaper and cheaper panels for the world. Panel imports in just the first half of 2024 reached 13 gigawatts. 1 gigawatt is a billion megawatts. Look at that. We had 5 gigawatts in 2023. It's more than doubled. We're almost 3 times. Pakistan is importing more than 3 times of solar panels that it imported in just last year. And this whole year is not out yet. So Pakistan is going solar on its own. People are tired of paying especially the more upper middle class and middle classes who can afford the capital it takes, because they're capital intensive, to set up their panels. They're going off grid, and there's not enough electricity left to buy, honestly, expensive electricity. So that's the issue. It's about pricing, it's about modernization, and it's about how you are able to lay a more efficient transmission system for the country. So, but that leaves us with a discussion still on what do we do about all the installed capacity. Now, that's a aging grid problem, and that's an issue that the power sector is dealing with. It is obviously not able to change its fundamentals, its pricing, its taxation, and its buyback rates from, I hope I'm not being too technical, its buyback rates from citizens. So there was some move to do that, and then there was some pushback from various groups, and your buyback rates remained. I suspect that those will at some point change, but I hope they don't. Now, to look at a broader view of how we decarbonize, of course, you have the EV policy actually now moving forward for 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers now, but that's more directly related to, I mean, if you really want to rid your cities of pollution, stop burning the crops, stop burning the cement fumes, put decarbonization filters in them, like we have insisted for Islamabad for the brick kilns. And what you do is you really start tuning your vehicles. Everything is not a big government solution. 40% of your local pollution will go down if you start just tuning your vehicles. And I think that's where the government comes in. They make a regulation. They say, all right, every time you come for your tax sticker, your vehicle goes for its tax sticker. It has to show compliance, like some other countries, on how its the vehicle emissions are still controllable and clean. Because, as I said, most of our cars and engines are not tuned, and your emissions are going up. But again, those are not global emissions, and that's not energy transition. That's a pollution issue, which can be easily controlled at the local level. So let me just conclude by asking a few questions that we are confronted with when we go to the big conferences. And I think Climate Week has begun with a big bang in New York City right now, and it will go up to COP29 in Baku. This is going to be the 30th big international conference on climate change. And as I said earlier, that we are far hotter than we ever were. We are off target. So why are we off target? We are off target because, hello, the fossil fuel industry is bigger and not certainly better, but badder than it ever was. Countries are giving away exploration leases for oil and gas hand over fist. There is more dirty energy being generated on Earth today than there was 30 years ago when these conferences started. You want to come to your own conclusions about exactly what power these companies, the bigger corporations whose GDP is more than many of our countries, is capturing. They're capturing elites and politicians to keep them in business. They are not capturing power, the carbon that they are emitting. And as a better news story for how to sequester your carbon, again, the private sector needs to be let loose. But make no mistake, if anyone's talking about public-private partnerships, those are certainly the future. I mean, Indonesia signed what is known as a Just Energy Transition Package in 2022 for $20 billion. And it was one of the largest public and private equity deal to be financed by Britain, Norway, and United States and Japan. A huge consortium came in. That is now not doing that well. I mean, I wish Indonesia better luck in moving that JETP package along, because we all were watching it for emulating it, for obtaining the kind of financing. 20 billion is a lot of money for financing. And you know why Pakistan wouldn't get it? Wouldn't get it because we're not big enough in emitters. And somebody that's working closely with me these days says, you know, if we were much huger emitters, if we were part of the big problem, then perhaps we might be getting the big attention and the money. We're only getting attention for the disasters you're talking about. But so that's how that JETP package is doing. And back home, what are we doing in terms of reducing our own carbon footprint? Something like, and because you're talking about mobilizing finances, something like the carbon sequestration project in Sindh, worth a visit and look at, is called it's the largest mangrove reclamation project in the world, but it is also selling carbon credits internationally to the private sector, and it's already generated over $150 million. It employs principally women, because that's the right thing to do. And it is, it's recreating a whole new ecosystem that was destroyed by overuse of that water, by polluting it with plastics. I hope this conference doesn't have plastic water bottles here. I don't know, I can't see them, but if LUMS wants to become a good climate citizen, it should remove single-use plastics from its conferences. I do this wherever I go. The Serena has stopped, the Marriott has stopped, the presidency has stopped, the PM house has stopped, many houses have stopped, and regulations have been sent out, at least for ICT. And for some of the provinces, they're notoriously hard to prevent, to implement, because the world is addicted to plastic. And this has also serious implications for emissions, but also for public health and your waterways. So please, by next time, there are water bottles available in the market from Murray Brewery to others. Please buy those. Please be good citizens. You're a fairly middle-class organization. Change must start at the top, and let's invest in some tech startups. I've just seen one a few days ago, believe it or not, from Balochistan, where the three children, young students, have created what is known as a fiber that will replace single-use plastics to carry, you know, food, water, yogurt, because all across South Asia, if you're in any lower middle class or even middle class neighborhood, you'll see the men and women carrying yogurt or milk at 7 a.m. If you're not up at 7 a.m., you won't see it, but that's what's going on. And this plastic is choking you, it's choking our oceans, our waterways, our rivers. You have the Ravi that is completely choked up, and we have the Indus in Sindh. So these are all related. All climate issues, including energy, are related. Plastic is it's not being recycled. If anyone tells you it is, please don't believe them. I was at the last treaty conference, and where they were all saying it's being recycled, and I said, no, I contest it. I contest it very strongly, because while Europe is sorting its garbage very diligently and very publicly, and it's important to do that, it's probably, we now have this figure, and I feel very justified that the world is recycling only 9%. 9% of your plastic globally. And if anyone, including our producers, tell you, I won't name them because they come into the room and they tell me, please stop saying this, we are recycling. Please tell me where your recycling collection points are. Are there any collection points all over Lahore? Recycling means collection points. When we were kids, and I'm way older than all of you, we drank from glass bottles. The Coca-Cola bottles came in glass. We would actually send them back to the shops or bring them back to the shops, and we'd get a new bottle. So, you know, community initiatives matter, public pressure matters. I know it's important to talk about emissions, but I think it's also important to talk about public health when you're talking about when you're at a big climate conference. And change has got to start at the top. Reducing emissions is not always in your control, but changing your lifestyle and consuming less water, well, not less water, but less of everything, will bring a change and will bring more circularity into your economy. And of course, bringing more circularity into your economy will reduce emissions. I can give you a figure for that. You can Google it right now, but there's a very clear line there. So with these words, I'm going to, take my leave and hope you have a productive conference, and I hope you get rid of plastics from your offices, homes, and schools, please. No more single-use plastics. They're not biodegradable. If anyone's telling you that, follow one bottle's journey. Please do it. And you'll see that it's not. There's no collection point for it. So who's recycling it? From the landfill? I don't think so. Thank you very much. Is it okay for me to sign off? What's up?
Thank you so much, Shri Rehman Saiba, for your insightful words. You can stay with us as it's time for, yeah, I mean, it's up to you totally, but it's time for the Charter of Demand of Asia Energy Transition Summit. So if you would like to listen to it, you are more than welcome to.
I'll listen to a few minutes because I have another engagement right after.
All right. All right. All right. All right.
As send it to me, please. I would request you to send it to me.
All right. All right.
Email it to me because it's important to hear what people all day long thought about and deliberated on.
Sure. Sure. We will send it to you, ma'am. Thank you. I would like to invite Mr. Muhammad Badr Alam for presenting the Charter of Demand of Asia Energy Transition Summit 2024. He's CEO of Policy Research Institute for Equitable Development. He is a journalist by profession and has been the editor of Herald and The News. He is also co-founder of a media organization, Lok Sajag. Badr Saab, over to you.
Thank you, Mess. It's quite a task to ask a journalist to sum up a summit that was mostly about engineering, technology, commerce, and economics, and I know nothing of these subjects. So it's a great burden, but I'll try to juggle around with the responsibility by probably taking some help from poetry and maybe some anecdotes and stuff like that. मेरे ख्याल में, in my humble opinion, this entire conference offers us a classical, traditional, generational fight. While on the one side, there are old people like me, and you can, equate people like me with fossil fuels. And then there are young people like Hania, and you can, symbolize them with the renewable energy. Now the old is insisting on staying, but the old cannot stay unless it's given some, injections and medicines and steroids and stuff like that. And the young cannot be stopped unless you really, enslave it and chain it and, put it in some kind of a dungeon. So the conclusions are clear and very obvious in front of us. And not just for this generation, this conclusion has been drawn by many, many great people much earlier than this. For instance, Jalaluddin Rumi said in one of his iconic verses, he said, Andak andak si jahane hasto bood, ke aista aista is jahan, from this world of being, slowly and slowly, nistand raftan, the people who are becoming nothing, they will move away. Vahasta mirasan, and the people who are coming into being, they will come and occupy and rule this world. So that's how life works. And in this scheme of things that people like Rumi have pointed out and people in this conference have pointed out, I think the old needs to understand that the subsidized model that it has been staying on has outlived its utility, and it's for the young to take over and take the world forward. With these words, I will read out the charters of demands that these three groups had basically created. These three groups were hard at work during the 2 days of conference, while there were like 4 plenary sessions and 4 panel discussions, there were also 6 group works that we did. And in those group works, the focus was on creating this charter of demand. And I'll read this out, and I'll hope that all of you will endorse it, and all of you will take it to your own organizations, and all of you will take it to the people that you know, so that this charter from this summit not just stays in this room, but spreads all across Pakistan's policy sphere and tries to, becomes a catalyst for the change that we're looking for. So for the first group, which was concerned about the multilateral development banks, here are their suggestions, their recommendations for the charter. Large-scale hydroelectric power should not be considered as a renewable energy source. I think this is one of the biggest sticking point when you talk to especially the multilateral development banks like World Bank. They say that we are investing in Pakistan's hydroelectric power because we think it's renewable. I think that's a major debating point for this forum to take to these multilateral developments and tell them that while you consider them renewable, people in Delta region in Pakistan do not, because their lives have been devastated, because their livelihoods have been destroyed because of the water that you stop upstream and never allow it to go to the Delta region, where their livelihood was dependent upon this water, which they would use for agriculture, which was also like a source for fish breeding for them that they would caught and sell. The second demand that this group has come up with is accountability and remedial measures of ongoing past operations, including projects, need to be put in place. And this is also not just concerning hydropower projects, but also the investments that multilateral banks have done in the fossil fuel. For instance, ADB funded Jamshoro power plant has just come out, just been completed, and it's coal funded in an era when coal is much older than I am. So in that era, we are having a new coal power project, which is both ironic and I think also totally misplaced. And their third demand is approvals for projects and project designs should be made contingent upon informed concept of attest at least 80% potentially potentially impact on the communities. Like no project should be approved unless you have studied its impact on the communities. Then their fourth demand is World Bank safeguards be allied with the entire range of environmental and social projects under international legal covenants and environmental principles. For instance, precautionary measures and others. Number 5 is all WB operations observe principle of stewardship, including ownership of local communities of all the projects that they undertake and invest. And number 6 is MDBs should stop considering gas as a transition fuel and instead enhance the renewable energy finance. So these are the 5 recommendations that the group working on MDBs has come up. I hope all of you agree with that. And then we have the group that worked on energy efficiency and conservation. And that group has come up with a number of recommendations. The first is that dynamics to be shifted towards global warming. Global capitalist system must be made more compliant to energy efficiency. Conservation standards to reduce energy intensity. Compliance with states, sectors, industries. Ambitious global pledge at COP29 for efficiency and conservation, compliance to codes and bylaws. I'm really sorry, my handwriting is bad, but whoever has written it is has much worse than mine. Energy audits and buildings. Private sector is engaged to save energy owing to rising energy costs, I think. Passive methods for cooling, keep in mind the geolocation, I think. Factor of safety to be realistic while designing locations. Fiasaba, I hope I'm not making any big blunders. Then there are local recommendations. These are energy audits of industries, standardization of appliances, mandates by CDA and RDAs, incentives for e-vehicles, smart grids, smart appliances, technical side, RE integration on the policy side, and the last one is behavior change on all levels. Thank you. Levels is written like, it's really like levels, level 1, 2, 3. So I'm really sorry about that. And then the third group that worked on RE financing, they have used the digital model. So that's the difference between the old and the new. So the new ones have given me a digital copy. They say that the context of this entire charter of demand is drivers needed for implementation. To achieve the renewable energy financing goals, the following drivers are necessary: policy and regulatory drivers, clear and predictable renewable energy policies, streamlined permitting processes, ambitious renewable energy targets and timelines. Then there are financial drivers, innovative financing instruments, for instance, green bonds, sustainability linked loans, concessional financing, for instance, interest-free loans, grants, tax incentives and penalties. Then there are technological drivers, grid infrastructure upgrades, energy storage solutions, renewable energy technology advancements. Then there is context 2, and it talks about partnerships and stakeholders required. Effective partnerships among the following stakeholders are crucial. The first one is government and policymakers. Establish clear, consistent, and predictable renewable energy policies and regulations. Number 2, set ambitious renewable energy targets and timelines. Number 3, provide incentives for renewable energy projects developments, for instance, tax credits and grants. To financial institutions, develop innovative financial instruments, for instance, green bonds, sustainably linked loans. Number 2, offer concessional financing, for instance, interest-free loans and grants. Number 3, prioritize renewable energy lending and investment to private sector companies, invest in renewable energy project development and technology innovation. Number 2, adopt sustainable business models and practices. Number 3, support community-based renewable energy initiatives. To civil society organizations, number 1, advocate for renewable energy policy and regulatory reforms. Number 2, promote community engagement and participation in renewable energy project development. And number 3, support environmental and social impact assessment. And to international organizations, number 1, provide technical assistance and capacity building programs. Number 2, mobilize climate finance and support RE project development. And number 3, facilitate knowledge sharing and South-South cooperation. This is quite a bit. So I think we do not need to have a debate, or do we need to have a debate on this? On all the 3 different parts of the recommendation that I've just read out. So if all of us agree on that, I will request you to raise your hands, and then we will, draft all these and share with all of you before we start sharing it with the policymakers and all the other relevant stakeholders who matter for this kind of a debate. Please raise your hands. Please, बहुत short रखिएगा. लोग थक गए हैं. Okay.
Yeah, I'm directly related with the WAPDA, who is controlling the water releases directly from the large dams. Please make it clear one thing to the MDB group. I was not a part of that group. It must be clarified that all these dams, they have been mainly built for the irrigation purpose and flood control, not for the electricity generation. So all the electricity generation, it is just regulated by IRSA, and whatsoever the Indian IRSA gave us, only that electricity and power water is released by WAPDA, and rest is just left for the irrigation purpose. So please make it clear.
Thank you. Thank you, Ji. Just to sum up the main takeaways of this summit, there are so many, and so many wonderful things have been said and talked about during this summit. But I think there are three major takeaways that we need to focus on. One is that small is not just beautiful, it's also increasingly useful for Pakistan's context. We do not need to think big if we need to address Pakistan's energy crisis. We need to think in terms of small grids rather than large dams. We need to think of in terms of small solar panels rather than having to put up power projects that take up like 600 acres of land to set up. So small is, as I said earlier, is very useful as far as Pakistan's energy policy making and energy landscape is concerned. Secondly, the sun god is finally smiling, perhaps, and he's smiling very benignly on us, and he wants us to benefit from its kindness and its benevolence. And if we ignore that, I think we will be doing only at our own peril. And thirdly, I think the greatest achievement of this summit was that from speaker one, Dr. Ali Chima, who came here and welcomed all the audiences and all the guests here, to Sherry Rahman, who just finished her speech, everyone agreed that Pakistan, not just Pakistan, but the whole of the world needs energy transition and needs it very, very urgently. So I think there is a miracle that has happened here, that so many people who gathered from all the different backgrounds and also from several countries and from several ages, they all agreed on one thing. So I think a clap to banti hai uske upar. I will beg your leave at this stage, and I will not stop you from going to do your own businesses after this conferences. But thank you very much for your time, for your energy that you have spent for this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Badar Saab, for presenting the Charter of Demand. Ladies and gentlemen, Energy Minister of Sindh, he was supposed to join us today, but unfortunately he couldn't. So he has recorded a video message for us. And Umair, if you can please play the video message.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. Thank you for being here today at the Asia Energy Transition Summit 2024. It's my privilege to be joining a diverse group of stakeholders, including international energy experts, representatives from financing institutions, academia, local energy experts, esteemed parliamentarians, and various government entities. Their presence highlights the collective commitment required for Pakistan's energy future. In this context, focus on themes central to our journey toward a cleaner, more sustainable energy future. First, we have renewable energy transition and its financing needs for Pakistan. Our move to renewable energy sources is essential for our energy security and economic resilience. But it comes with financing challenges. We need robust mechanism to attract investment, whether through international, private, or public-private partnerships, to advance solar, wind, and hydropower adoption. Next, we have green financing and its significance. Green financing is the tool that can make our energy transition a reality. We need innovative solutions like green bonds to support projects that align economic growth and environmental goals, ensuring our development is climate resilient. We also have the role of CPEC in energy transition. CPEC is a key driver of transformation in Pakistan. With CPEC, we aim to not only boost industrial growth, but also promote renewable energy and efficiency to reduce carbon emissions. Lastly, we have energy efficiency and its role in decarbonization. Improving energy efficiency across sectors is a critical and cost-effective means to reduce energy demand and carbon emissions. This must be a priority in our overall decarbonization efforts. Together, through shared knowledge, innovative financing, and collaborative action, we can drive a cleaner and more resilient energy sector for Pakistan. I look forward to the insights and contribution each of you bring to these crucial discussions. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for shield distribution. We will be giving token of appreciation to all our worthy speakers. To present the shields, may I please request Dr. Tariq Jadoon, Provost LUMS, to join us on stage. Dr. Fiaz Chaudhary, Chairman NTDC and Senior Advisor to LUMS. Dr. Naveed Arshad, Director, LUMS Energy Institute, and Mr. Mustafa Amjad, Chair, Pakistan Renewable Energy Coalition. We greatly acknowledge the presence of Mr. Razak Dawood, Pro-Chancellor LUMS, Mr. Shahid Hussain, Rector LUMS, Dr. Ali Chima, Vice Chancellor LUMS. They are not here, so we would request Dr. Tariq Jadoon to receive the token of appreciation on their behalf. आगे चलें? अच्छा, ठीक है जी. So I would start with international experts. I would request Mr. Arturo Tahoop from Institute for Climate and Sustainable Studies to please come up on stage and receive his token of appreciation. Okay, if he's not here, may I please request Mr. Charles from ICSC. Mr. Hessam Azhar, you are up next. Dr. Tatiana from Agora Energiewende.
Miss Hannah Sophia Irina. Dr. Irfan Khan, Texas A&M University. Engineer Usman Sheikh, TMNA.
Dr. Sun Yishan from University of Bath. Dr. Hassan Aftab from University of Oxford. Mr. Arturo Tahoop from Institute for Climate and Sustainable Studies. Mr. Federico Sibaha from FARN. Mr. Zakir Hussain from Change Initiated Limited.
Ms. Hania Issad Aifa. Dr. Majid Bilal, Indus Consortium.
Yeah, exactly. I would request Dr. Naveed to give the vote of thanks to all the participants.
So I just wanted to say thank you to all the participants who spent their weekend here. You are truly energy transition champions, and we hope that with you we'll be working on it. I'd just like to say two things, not more than take 1 minute. One is that Pakistan has actually really has developed some projects for climate change. I was at the New York Climate Week earlier this week. And the example of the Indus Delta project that Madam Shireen Rahman was referring to was considered as a first of its kind. And it wasn't set as an example of that kind of projects in the world. So I think there are some things that we have been doing. Secondly, very important thing for Asia, I hope we do not go into this climate finance into a next debt trap. I do not want to take the name, but we do not want to go into an economic hitman 2.0. And also, we also do not want to have a debt because the collateral is not the project, but it's our next generation. And we are already into our debt trap. Somebody signed us up as a collateral some time ago. We don't want to do it for our next generation. So thank you very much. And after this, we will have a visit to the e-mobility R&D research labs. For those of you who'd like to accompany us, it's on the way to the parking lot, so you can spend 5 minutes there or 10 minutes, whatever you like. If Umar can stand somewhere, or Shahid, if you can stand, Shahid can accompany you. Just go with him and he'll show you the e-mobility R&D research lab. It's almost $1 million facility they have developed to promote research in R&D in electric vehicles, especially for the industry. Thank you very much for your presence, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.